Welcome to the Well Worship Man podcast, where men come to build unshakable presence, become the rock in their relationship, and shape a legacy that lasts beyond their years. Here, we explore the path to mature masculinity through humble power, daily devotion, and unwavering integrity.
Today on the podcast, we have Ryan Walla. For more than 15 years, Ryan Walla has coached men through the inner battles that keep them stuck, helping them lead with strength, emotional intelligence, and purpose. Today, he works directly with married men who are thriving in business but quietly struggling at home, guiding them to rebuild intimacy, confidence, and leadership in their marriages. Married for nearly 2 decades himself and a father of 3, Ryan knows firsthand the challenges and breakthroughs that come with balancing business success, family life, and personal growth. Welcome to the pod, Ryan.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. A big part of your work is this concept of emotional leadership. And something that I've been sharing and something that we just saw on your Instagram, and I scrolled through your page before we came on, is this concept of going first. So talk to us about what emotional leadership means for a man and why going first is such an important crux of that.
That's a great question. Before I go into what it means, I'd like to take just a second and explain what it doesn't mean, because I think that's important too. A very important distinction. Because after getting 30 plus million views and hundreds, if not thousands, of comments, one of the pushbacks that I've received is, especially from women, is like, we don't want a leader. We want a partner. We want partnership. And I imagine for not only the ladies, but for the men, there's this misconception of what leadership means. It's not dominating. It's not like you're going to do what I say or else. That's not leadership. It's not leadership. Leadership is more about knowing who you are, knowing where you want to go, and knowing the best path to get there. And so for a man to go first, what I believe that means is, I think it's best explained if I share a story. Can I just tell a quick story on how this works? So this was several weeks ago. It was about a month ago. I tell my clients, I say, if you think that everything is just like rainbows and unicorns and just amazing in the Walla household, you're sadly mistaken. I mean, it was a Saturday morning. The kids were bickering and fighting. They weren't doing their chores. My wife is getting involved, and then they're fighting back and forth and yelling at her. And now I'm involved because you're not going to talk to my wife that way. And it was just like everything started to escalate. And at one point I was like, what is going on? Like all of my skills, all of my tools, all of my techniques, all the things that I teach my guys, nothing was working. And at one point I was walking down the hallway and my 12-year-old son was coming the other direction and he checks me. And I was like, this is not happening here. So I check him back and I was like, you're not going to do that to me. And his immediate reply was, oh, but you can do it to me. And I said, okay, you're right. And I separated myself. I went upstairs. I went to the bedroom and I sat down and I was like, okay, what's going on? And I had to take a couple of deep breaths. I had to center and ground myself. I had to figure out, okay, what am I feeling? What's going on with Ryan first? Okay, I'm really pissed off right now. Is that what I want? No, that's not what I want. Okay, Ryan, what do you want? I want peace in my house. And as soon as I heard that go through my mind, my ego was like, don't you say it. Don't you say it. Because the next thing that came through was, it starts with you. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in my bedroom on the second floor in my house, and I can hear outside in the backyard my wife and my 12-year-old yelling back and forth outside in the backyard because she's chewing him out about what just happened between he and I in the hallway, right? Why do I have to go first? Why does it have to start with me? Starts with you. Starts with you. So I went downstairs, I went outside, and I told my wife, I said, I'll take it from here. Go wait for me on the porch. So she goes and sits down, and I look at my son and I say, I'm sorry. That wasn't cool for me to do that, and I apologize. I am your father, and I'm supposed to protect you, and that was not what protection looks like, and I was wrong to do that, and I apologize. And he and I had, that's the nuts and bolts of that conversation, but I mean, there was still some tension there, but it was, since a young age, I've taught my kids to, hey, if somebody says I'm sorry, you have the option to say whether or not I forgive you. If you want to hold on to it, that's up to you. But I encourage you to forgive and start letting it go and move on. So he said, I forgive you. Okay. We didn't hug at the moment because he wasn't ready for it. And I was like, I get it. I understand. Maybe later. And then I go and I sit on the porch next to my wife on the swing, and she's sobbing. And I was, okay, what do I say now? Nothing. Just breathe. Okay. So all I did, this technique I call low and slow breathing. So now I'm exaggerating on the audio so that you can hear me, but I'm just breathing and she's weeping. About 5, maybe 6 minutes go by, and then she starts talking. And this happened, 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 and this happened. And then, and I'm, okay, I'm just listening. I'm listening. What am I supposed to say? I don't know. I've got no magical words and no bomb dropping nuggets of insight. Just listen. And then eventually she calmed down. And then I went inside and I talked to my 14-year-old. And then I went and I talked to my 9-year-old. But eventually the temperature in the house came down. And about an hour later, we're cooking lunch and I've got the radio on in the kitchen. We're doing dishes, we're cooking food, and we're dancing and we're singing and we're high-fiving. And then eventually I turn the radio down. I'm like, guys, what happened earlier? What was that all about? And then we get to learn the lesson on how we can avoid those things in the future. So I share that long story to come back to, I wasn't bossing people around, but I led the way forward by knowing who I am and not allowing their emotional state to dictate my emotional state. That, in my opinion, is where leadership comes from. And that's why it's important for a man to go first.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I think that was the best way to illustrate emotional leadership. And there's so much, we were just talking about this, there's so much good that can be done by men like you sharing that sometimes it's still hard and that men have permission for it to be hard and still try to walk forward. And, when you're sharing about emotional leadership, there were two parts of that story that are opposite of what men think they should do or what their conditioning is. And the first one is you going first. A lot of men believe that going first is giving in, is like admitting to defeat. If you come to the negotiations table first, you're weak. And then the second part of the story is when you're sitting on the swing set with your wife of, you didn't have the perfect thing to say, but that's what men think they should. They think they should find the 6-digit code to unlock her and say the perfect thing. And it's like, no, just sit and you breathe. And I know in your head, maybe I don't know, but my guess is in your head, you're still trying to figure out that 6-digit code to unlock it. But
Oh,
you're
yeah,
like,
yeah, for
no,
sure.
no, I'm just gonna be here. I'm just gonna remain in this discomfort. I am not going to put myself first here and try to relieve myself of the discomfort because it's not about me. It's about her.
Well said.
Yeah, something that's really beautiful about the story that you shared as well, I think, is this it's clear that though when you sat with yourself, you found, oh, my desire is peace in my house, but the way that you approach it is not, how do I get rid of this? It's, what is this moment asking for? And, the conversation with your son looks completely different from the way that you supported your wife, which looks completely different to your other two children, I'm sure. But that's something I think that is missing sometimes of, oh, it's not about what's the right words to say to get rid of the dis-ease that I'm feeling. It's more so, what is this moment asking for? And one of the ways that that really is proven in your story is an hour later circling back to, okay, what's the lesson? And in my experience, I've felt a lot of times that the dissonance matters until the dissonance is cleared, but that's not really where the growth happens. The growth happens afterwards, where we integrate it and act differently and talk about what we learned. And I think that that's a really valuable thing that you're holding in your family, but also just a really important part of, okay, it isn't about getting rid of my wife's tears or getting rid of my son's aggression. Will my house have more peace when those things aren't being felt anymore? For sure, but it will have more sustainable peace if we all learn something from the experience together and move forward, all being on the same page with like what the lesson was.
I agree 100%. And it's, the idea of, Isaac, you mentioned this, and then Jessica, you did as well just a second ago, about the idea of what's the right thing? What do I need to say here? And for me, that was one of, in my opinion, in my growth and my development and watching my marriage go to new levels, when I stopped trying to be right and instead I sought to be wise, everything changed, right? My ego wants to be right. Nobody, my 12-year-old's not going to push me in the hallway. I'm justified in pushing back. That's my ego being right, right? Or I'm trying to stop her from crying and trying to find the right words instead of just, like you said, holding space and being there. You know, the whole idea of, maybe you've heard this, or like the concept of fitness, okay? You go to the gym, you work out, you break down the muscle. But when does the muscle get better? When you rest in the recovery period. So you're never, ever, ever, especially with kids, going to be able to teach a lesson when the emotions are high. It won't work because that ability to that cognitive reasoning isn't really there. Okay. So you need to wait until the temperatures calm down, and then everybody can be like, hey, let's talk about what happened earlier. What happened here and what happened there? And hey, you responded this way. Is that the best way you could have responded? How can we respond different in the future? What does kindness look like in that moment? So I think the concept of seeking to be wise rather than being right. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a pushover, right? Like you mentioned earlier, Isaac's like, guys have to just give in. That's not the case either. But it is holding a boundary, right? Because if a man checks out, his wife is going to feel she's not going to respect him if he checks out as well, right? You're almost better staying and getting into the argument than you are leaving, because at least you're holding some type of a frame. But if a man can see his wife in her emotional state and just like literally, I'm not trying to do this like in a joking way, but if he can just sit back and do this and just admire the beauty of the situation, he'll be a lot better off than trying to Mr. Fix It.
So, it's one thing to know that, like, it's one thing for men to hear, okay, don't try to fix it, just sit and listen and be present. But how do you actually remember to do that? Or how do you actually practice to do that? Because it's not this is the case with all growth things that we learn. It's not just knowing that this is how I should do it, but actually being okay, feeling how uncomfortable it is for someone that you love to be an emotional mess, for lack of better words, for a time until it isn't, which is 5 minutes, 5 hours, I don't know.
So the question is, how does a man learn to hold that space? Is that the question?
Yeah, like where does someone start learning to be able to sit in that?
I have a saying that I teach my clients, and I try to build this mantra into them as much as I can. And that is, the way forward is in, otherwise it's war. The way forward is in, otherwise it's war. Now, what does that mean? And I imagine this answers your question. If a man wants to hold space for anyone, he must first be able to hold space for himself. So I recognized, and that little interaction between my son and I, he checks me, I check him back immediately. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Krav Maga, but I did Krav Maga self-defense training for almost 8 years. And so when he ran up against me, it was instantaneous. It was just a reaction. I reacted versus respond. I'll come back to that in a second. But I realized I needed some space. So I honored that. Like I said, I went to my room and I just sat with myself. Okay, it starts with awareness. To answer the question, you have to be aware. You have to be mindful of where you're at, what's going on within you, what's going on around you. I was aware that I was not enjoying the current situation. And I was actually very much ashamed of how I just treated my son and what happened. So I had to sit with myself. What's going on? So it starts with awareness. There's a framework that I teach my guys, whatever. I call it the ABCs. You got the ABCs. It's your path to being present. And if you're not present, you have no power as a man, because your mind is too far in the future or it's stuck in the past and it's not here right now. So the ABCs, it starts with awareness. I'm aware. Then I'm going to breathe, belly, chest, head. And then I'm going to see, connect with myself first. What's going on with me? What do I need to feel safe in this moment? What am I looking for? And once I've established that for myself, my wife can't give me what I need. My kids can't give me what I need. You guys can't give me only I can. So I'm aware. I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths, and then I'm going to connect with myself. And once I've done that, then I can go and connect with other people. Coming back to the whole reaction piece, we have to understand that there's 3 stages to habit change. The first stage is complete unawareness. You're just falling into the habit, falling into the pattern, just doing and behaving a certain way. There's no awareness. There's no even comprehension of what the outcome is of your behavior and those patterns. That's stage one. Stage two is you're aware after the fact because you're reflecting back. So my son checked me, I checked him back. And after the fact, I'm like, that wasn't cool. Shouldn't have done that. And this plays out in many areas of life for men and women. You're unaware, then you're aware after the fact. Oh man, I messed that up. I shoulda, coulda, woulda, blah, 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 blah. But then eventually you move into stage three where you're aware before, so you get to make a choice. Okay. I've never had one of my children check me before. That was a first in my life, right? I mean, playing is one thing, but he was mad. And the way he hit me, and I had never dealt with that before. So I had no ability. There was no frame of reference. Whereas I have a frame of reference now when I see my wife walk in and she's got a certain posture and she's breathing a certain way. I'm like, okay, I'm already breathing. I'm already grounded. I'm already curious. So I'm making a choice to show up different. So to answer your question, there's stages, and you need to be gracious with yourself and acknowledging what stage you're in. Maybe somebody listening to this, before hearing it, they've been completely unaware of how they've been showing up. Now they've heard this information and they're like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Next time they're in a situation after the fact, they may realize, man, I could have done something different. Hey, at least you're having the awareness, ABCs. So you're aware now. So breathe. And then what do you need to do to connect? And then you practice that enough, and eventually you're going to get to where you're able to make that choice in real time. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and totally. It's something that we share a lot is you notice after the fact, maybe it's 3 days after the fact. And then the next time it's a day. And then the next time it's 2 hours. And you shorten that window enough until, like you
That's right.
said, it's in real time. And something else that you touched on is the healthy shame that you felt after checking your son back. And so I think it's important for shame is a spiral that we can get stuck in. But if we understand that, a certain dose of shame is actually great motivation for change and having the self grace to say, okay, I'm feeling healthy shame about this. And now, because I've listened to this conversation, now I know that this is the gem that I need to begin to change this habit. I actually have what I need. I'm not the worst guy in the world. I made a mistake, but now I have what I need to become a better guy. I think that's really important.
Agreed.
Something I want to circle back to is guys are afflicted with a lot of false choices, and one, we talked about giving in. And one false choice is I either have to be a pushover or I either have to completely dominate every situation, or I have to just say that I'm wrong and cede my position, or I have to stand firm and not accept any feedback or critique. And as a leader, you have to kind of know, you have to be able to find some middle ground. So how do you, as a father and a husband, walk that line between giving in and standing firm?
Well, let's go back to the concept of seeking wisdom, right? I'm not here to be right. I'm here to be wise. And in order to be wise, I need to be curious. Because obviously, whatever's like my wife has something that she wants to say to me, my kids have something that's going on, and there's obviously an emotional disconnect. There's turmoil. Something's obviously going on. And in their opinion, in their perspective, they're right. So I let them be right, but I want to be wise. Tell me what's going on. How can I ask better questions and learn why are you feeling the way you're feeling? Why would you be thinking the thing that you're thinking? Help me understand. Because I believe that's the difference between conversations and arguments, right? An argument is where there's two people, you have an opinion, the other person has an opinion, and they're different and opposite, and you're both talking back and forth, trying to convince the other person that your side is the right side, right? And their way of thinking is completely erroneous and wrong. That's an argument. Even if we're smiling and we're having a good time and we're joking a little bit, if you're trying to convince the other person that you're right and they're wrong, that's an argument. Whereas a conversation says you are completely entitled to your opinion and your emotions. And so am I. How about we find where we can meet in the middle so we can both move forward? Forgive me. The original question is like just popped out of my head. And maybe you want to cut that out. But what was the original question?
It's how do you, as a leader, walk the line between giving in and standing firm, between being a pushover and being a tyrant?
Got it. Okay. So to seek wisdom and to have a conversation and help me understand what's going on for you. Now, let's say, for example, my kids are doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Okay. And I've asked them 2 or 3 times, turn the TV off or go brush your teeth or whatever the case may be. I'm very big on You get to choose how this plays out. Option number one is you acknowledge with respect and manners, yes, sir, no, ma'am, whatever, and you go and finish the task that's been asked of you to finish. Then you can get back to doing whatever you want to do or, go to bed or whatever the case may be. Option number two is you continue down the path that you're on right now. You can continue to talk back. You can continue to be disrespectful. You can continue to like waste time, and there's going to be a consequence for that type of behavior. So you get to pick. You get to decide, how do you want this to play out? And tomorrow, when you're reaping the consequences of your actions, don't get mad at me because I gave you a choice, right? So in my opinion, that's one of the best ways for kids to stand firm, right? I've set a boundary. I've said what I've said. And I even tell my boys, because they're older, and I tell them, listen, if you can give me 4 good reasons why this is not ideal, I will listen to you. Let's have a conversation. Tell me what's your perspective. And if it's like, damn, he put some thought into this. He really spent some time. You know what? I'll meet you in the middle. Okay, let's figure something out. Because I can tell that you're not just pissed off and dad's being a meanie, right? When it comes to my wife, my goal is to never change her emotional state. Okay, now I say that, and I'm also very cognizant of something I call it pattern interrupt. If I can do something, I've got a small window between 3 to 5 minutes. If I can just change her perspective or get her thinking about something else or thinking about it in a different way, I might be able to save this current situation. And if I can't, cool. I love you. Give you your space. I'll talk to you in a little bit. But the main thing is I'm very big on respect. Okay? If you want to have an argument, we can have an argument, but we're going to be civil about it. But honestly, I'd rather not argue. I want to understand you, and I want to be understood. I'm not trying to change your mind or change your perspective, but I do want to find a way that we can both move forward with this. So I think that's a way for a man to create a boundary, stand firm, but also allow space for the input and opinions of other people. Because I think that's a sign of effective leadership is if a leader doesn't listen to the people that he's leading, that is poor leadership. So I need that feedback so I can check myself too. Am I doing a good job or am I turning into a tyrant? I hope that answers the question.
I was thinking really that it was interesting in the beginning when you were sharing, and women will say they don't want a leader. They want to be partnered. And as you're talking, it's bringing up this thought that, okay, well, have you ever been with someone who is a leader? Or is there just maybe an understanding of if someone's a leader, then you have to follow them? You're
Yeah.
secondary. Or is actually leadership a trait that everyone should have access to and hold, and that would make the household run a bit differently? And what's coming up at the same time is that this idea of respect that you're bringing through. Okay, you really hold respect as a cornerstone in your house, and that seems to be part of being a leader. But one of the things that we teach is you don't just get respect. You show up in a way that calls forward respect. You show up in a way that is respected. And so what are the things or the characteristics that you would share with men that maybe are desiring to be respected, but are in partnerships where they're not receiving, or at least in their perception, they're not being respected? Or in my household, there was kind of this belief of, well, I'm the parent, so you have to respect me. Well, that's not a little, but
Yeah.
Ideally the parents or the man in the house is acting in a way where respect isn't really a question. It's naturally something that's coming forward because of the way they're showing up. So where would you guide Ben down that?
Again, I would start with the inner man. The way forward is in, otherwise it's war. I guarantee if a man is experiencing disrespect in his life to one degree or another, he is not respecting himself. Period, full stop, end of story. Now the question is, well, that doesn't really help me understand, okay, what do I do? The point of me sharing that isn't so that guys are left scratching their head okay, now what? The reason I share that is if a man is experiencing disrespect, high likelihood he's experiencing one of 3 emotions or all 3. He's feeling bitterness, resentment, or despair. He's feeling one of those emotions or all 3, bitterness, resentment, and despair. So he's, well, I asked my wife what she wanted to do and where she wanted to go out to eat, and she just rolls her eyes and huffs and puffs. And well, screw her. And so now there's a level of bitterness. And then there's that thought that goes through the back of the man's mind of like, if she thinks I'm an asshole, just wait. I'll show her what an asshole is. Now there's resentment, right? Or there's that thought that goes through his mind, man, I can't take any more of this. What am I supposed to do? Where am I going to go? How long am I going to have to put up with this? Now there's despair, okay? And if one of those three emotions are showing up, I guarantee you that man is operating in an illusion. And the illusion that he's operating in is he is viewing the world, I say this with love and respect, he is operating in the illusion of victim mentality. And he is expecting and he's blaming other people for his emotional state. He's blaming other people. Now he has bitterness, resentment, and despair, and a high likelihood that he has this feeling and this logic in his mind, I must be right. And this is why these feelings are justified. 100% victim mentality. He may not be crying, woe is me, but I guarantee you he's operating in an illusion because his ego and his logic is telling him this story that he has to be right. And this is why these feelings are justified because it's their fault. Whenever I get on a call with a guy, whether it's a potential client or a client, and they're telling me a story and I hear these clues are coming through, I ask them a question like, hey, Mr. Client, you're a smart, powerful guy. Do you like to be manipulated? No, I don't know. I don't want to be manipulated. Yeah, I didn't think you did. But every time you allow someone else, their action or inaction to determine your emotional state, you're a puppet and you're letting them play you. They're not playing you on purpose. Most people aren't. Okay? But you're being manipulated nonetheless. So how about you take your power back? It starts with the man. If he's feeling disrespect, where is he not respecting himself? And I can get into, there's a whole topic on like self-confidence and self-value. And high likelihood, if a man is feeling disrespect, he is not valuing himself. And I can unpack that, self-confidence and self-value as well, if you'd like for me to.
Yeah, I think this next question might lead us there. That paradigm shift from it's everybody else's fault to I get to take 100% responsibility can be abrupt, and having to admit that I've created the dissonance in my marriage, I've created the disconnection with my kids, I've created a lack of upward mobility in my career. That's really hard. And there's a danger that when you start to admit those truths, that it really touches on those stories that so many guys struggle with, usually unconsciously, of I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough. So in the midst of that paradigm shift from it's all their fault to this is all my responsibility, how do you work with guys to make sure that that paradigm shift doesn't reduce them into these shame spirals of I'm not good enough and I've never been good enough, and look at all the evidence for me not being good enough. Look at my life.
Yeah. That's a really powerful question. My first response is to when I hear a man saying and talking like that is, you're right. You're not good enough. You're right. You are a failure. You are unworthy. Because let me ask you a question. Like, I think there's a lot of, especially amongst Christian men, okay? You'll find this a lot in like really religious Christian men, this idea of I'm a failure, or I'm not good enough, or I'm unworthy. Well, those are lies of the devil. And it's like, hold on a minute. Have you ever failed at anything in your life? Well, yeah. So is it a lie? Well, this idea of you're not good enough, are you like phenomenal at everything you've ever tried to do? Or are you not good enough in some areas? Well, yeah, I'm not. So is that a lie? The point is that I'm trying to say is we need to, here's the analogy that I give most guys. Imagine you're driving down the road and you're looking through the windshield and there's all of these billboards and signs, and there's a big mural painted on the side of this building. And like you said, Isaac, there's all of this evidence, all of these signs. Like not good enough, failure, dropped the ball over here, messed up that, pushed my son up against the wall, yelled at my wife, all of this evidence, all of these facts coming at me. But if I stop the car and I look in my rearview mirror, I'll see that on the back of every one of those signs, there's the positive. Yeah, I did push my son up against the wall, but I learned a valuable lesson in that moment, and I learned how to create peace in my home. Yeah, I have yelled at my wife, and I've also apologized, and I've sought to become a better version of me, and I've learned these tools and these techniques. So my point is, if you can look in that rearview mirror and see all of the different positives that have come out of these negatives, you learned something every time you failed. Okay, you're not good at that thing, but there's some things that you're amazing at. You may not be worthy of this thing, but there are things that you are absolutely destined to receive. Yes. So now it's just a matter of turning the car around and reframing what you're looking at through the window. Now you're looking at all the positive things, and you can acknowledge in the rearview mirror, yeah, there's a couple of failures back there. There's some mistakes back there. Sure am. So my point is, when that shame is coming up, man, there was a moment about 2.5, 3 years ago. I was in it bad. I was just in a bad, and I'm driving home and I'm just, oh man, I'm so unworthy. I'm so unworthy. I'm unloved, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and woe is my life. And I'm weeping while I'm driving home, and I'm exiting the freeway. And right as I pull up to the stop sign as I'm getting off the freeway, I was like, you're right. I'm not worthy. There are people who don't love me. I am not good. And I call this exercise how to argue with the devil. Cause I take that thing. It's like, do you remember the movie? Did you ever see 8 Mile with Eminem?
Yeah. What you're about to say, I just said to a man yesterday.
Yeah. It's exactly at the end of the movie for the listeners or the viewers who don't know, at the end of the movie, he's in this rap battle. And what he does is, instead of trying to like be better than the other guy, he just rags on himself basically. And then he steals all of the other guy's ammunition that he was going to use and uses it on himself. And then he's like, now tell me something I don't already know about me, right? Now, I don't care where you're at on the political spectrum of things, but I saw this in real time several years ago. I didn't know it at the time, but I saw it several years ago during a presidential debate between when Trump and Hillary Clinton were doing the presidential debate. And Hillary Clinton is like, well, basically, he's doing tax fraud and he's evading taxes and blah, 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 blah. And you know what Trump did? He wasn't like, well, no, that's not the case. That's not the case. No, that didn't happen. He goes, yeah, I use the system. You use the system too. And all of your friends that pay for your things, that donated to your system, to your platform, they use the system too. And the reason you won't change the system is because you guys use it. So don't come over here and tell me that I'm cheating the tax system when you guys do the same thing. You don't like it, change it, but you won't, because you do the same thing that I do. And so the point is, whether you like the guy or not, there was no argument left. So when that guilt and that shame is coming at you, the last thing you want to do is run from it. Because if you run from it, it's going to keep chasing you. So here's another little thing. If you memorize this, laugh at the devil and he'll run away from you. You're right. That moment when I pushed my son up against it, I'm a fuck up. I'm all fucked up. You're right. That was shitty. And I don't like admitting it. I'm not happy or proud to admit that. I really am not. But I'm more proud of the gold and the lesson that I learned from it. And that I can get on this call and I can say, I make mistakes too. And my goal is to learn from them so that I can be better. Like, last thing I'll say is this, the yin yang, okay? Yin is at its strongest when there's a little bit of yang in it, and vice versa. And so as long as we're trying to be this pure, perfect, holy, blameless version of ourselves, we're gonna be disappointed. We're gonna let others down, we're gonna let ourselves down. So when I can love, accept, and forgive myself in my darkest times, now I have way more capacity to have compassion and grace and mercy for other people.
I love the idea of stealing the ammunition. A little bit of a different frame, but I often teach people just remembering the inner child. I call my inner child Jessie. And so I often, when I do something that I am not proud of, just remind myself like, oh, Jessie, it's like so cute that you thought that that was the right thing. It's okay. Like, just come over here. We'll do it this way next time, you know? And it brings in this similar laughter, you know, of, like, laugh at the mistakes, learn the lessons from them, but you don't have to make it your whole identity that you erred
Exactly.
in that moment. So yeah, thank you for that visual of the car. I really like that. And I want to circle back to what we were talking about with the mentality of the victim, because I've found that as people are doing this work, one of the ways that, you know, once people start taking accountability and responsibility for their actions, that the victim will creep its way back in is, but I have to do this every time. I always have to be the one to XYZ. Why do I always have to be the one that starts bringing peace back into my house? Why do I always have to be the one that makes it all better, whatever the story is? And that maybe is a question of capacity. Maybe someone's reaching their limit because they haven't slept well or they're going through something. But that particular story seems to be a challenge because we do all want compassion and we do all want to be nurtured and cared for, regardless of what role we're playing in the house. So where do we go when that voice comes in, and how do we shift this narrative that men need to lead or get to lead in the household, but they also do get to be nurtured. But there is maybe like a time and a place, and that idea of, oh, why is it always me, is maybe getting in the way.
It's a great question. And again, I think that part of that feeling, if an individual, man or woman, is having that feeling of like, why does it always have to be me? Why? Why does it have to start with me? I would invite the person that's having those thoughts. I would invite them to, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this like healing journey? Why are you doing this growth, this personal development? Why are you doing it? Are you doing it so that they'll love you or so that you'll love you? And I'm fairly certain that if we can come back to and get to the root of why are you doing this healing work anyway, so that you'll be able to receive more love from who? Because that thought of like, well, why do I have to go first? I'm not making fun of anybody, but when that's showing up, there's usually because that person is keeping score. And if you're keeping score, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Because I was there. I thought, man, if I go to counseling, if I read these books, if I become a better man, then my wife's going to love me. Why isn't she loving me? When is she going to do her work? When is she going to take accountability? And I've seen this with many of the guys that I've worked with too. The first couple of weeks they come on board and they start working with me, they see some results. And then they kind of fall into this like, not really dead zone, but it's like nothing is really changing and things are kind of staying the same and nothing is really happening. And then they get on a call and they're like, how much longer am I going to have to do this? Brother, why are you doing it? Well, when is she going to? Why are you worried about what she's doing or not doing? What are you doing? You're so worried about what her side of the street looks like. You got to clean up your side of the street first. So for anybody, man or woman, who's like, well, what about them? What about them? What about them? You're keeping scores, knock it off. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it so you can receive love from someone else. But again, the way forward is in, otherwise it's war. It's about learning how to love yourself first. And if you can do that, if that's what your healing journey is about, learning how to love myself, I'm not keeping score anymore. I'm doing it because this is the purest form of love that I can embody. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah. As we've been talking, leadership has been a thread throughout. And there have been several moments where you demonstrated the importance of humbling oneself to be a leader, like throwing out the scoreboard, being the first one to apologize to your son, asking your sons, hey, if you have 4 good reasons why you're seeing this more clearly than I am, I'm like open to listen. And, people who are thinking about leading, they like the idea of leading. It feels powerful. It feels influential. It feels like they'll get a lot from it. But the reality of leadership is that there's a lot of exposure. There's a lot of uncertainty and vulnerability. There's the depedestalizing of yourself. And so I'm curious, like, what are some of the lies about leading that you've got to break to guys before they can actually occupy that?
First thing that comes to mind is this idea that I have to be tough, no emotion, hard face, cold. I don't think there's a time for peace and a time for war, obviously. And I believe humility starts with being human and acknowledging that you have a wide variety and range of emotions. Like I've cried in front of my kids. Okay. And it freaks them out, but it's like, hey, you don't have to fix anything. It's okay. I'm going through my stuff. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have these big emotions. They've seen me frustrated. They've seen me sad. They've seen me overjoyed. They've seen me fired up. And I think for someone who wants to lead, you can only lead those who are willing to follow. Okay. And to a degree, a man has dominion over his home. So he's already like established in a way to have a level of leadership, and everybody in the home is looking to him on setting the temperature and the tone and the direction of the family. Yes, there's a partnership, 100%. He needs to have conversations with his wife. And again, there needs to be understanding and compromise there. I was going somewhere with that. It'll come back to me. It's not coming back to me. Humility requires humanity. And I want to be as much human as I can be. And, okay, courage. What is courage? It's not running into the burning building. Like, yeah, you can do that. Okay. But true courage is being able to be authentic, be yourself. Now there's a time and a place, obviously, yes. And I believe that it's not wise It is unwise for a man to always share his deep fears and emotional feelings with his wife. I don't think that's wise. I think that's why there needs to be brotherhood and community for a man to share his feelings, deep, scary thoughts with another man, because he needs to create a level of safety and security for his wife. Okay. So a man needs to find a community to do that. And true courage lies in vulnerability, being authentically you, saying what's going on for you, acknowledging when you're struggling. I don't have to go into details on why I'm struggling, but if I can tell my wife it's been a tough day, I don't have to, it's all good, and I'm just walking around all pissed off. Well, she can tell something's wrong, right? Who am I really fooling here? So just be real, guys. Be real. And you're going to get farther being real than you will trying to lie. And that's a whole nother topic about lies and truth and transforming yourself. Sorry.
I have a clarification question about this statement or belief that to an extent a man has dominion over his house. And I think that there's probably people that might hear that and be like, well, no, have some type of feelings about it. And I have a sense that maybe I kind of understand what you're saying, I think, but I would love to hear you expand on that, because there's definitely men who aren't sitting in that seat. And maybe that's part of why the household is a little shaky, because the foundation's shaky.
Yeah.
And then maybe there are men who could step into that more so, or even female listeners who could understand, better what you mean by that.
So what I mean by dominion is going back to the story that I told at the beginning of the call. When I was sitting by myself and I thought, what does Ryan want? I want peace. Now, I'm not going to go out there and start knocking heads, right? I could do that. Some men might think that that's leadership. You're going to do what I say. Stop crying and behave. You're not going to push me. Stop crying. Why are you being all emotional? Knock it off. I don't have time for this bullshit. That's poor leadership.
Mhm.
So when I say dominion, I wanted peace in my home. And it started with me. I'm sorry. I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to say a word. I'm just going to breathe and give you space to have your emotional moment. I'm going to go and I'm going to connect with my kids. Going to close the loop after a couple of hours when everybody's calm, and we're going to bring the lesson back, and I'm going to close that loop. In my opinion, that's dominion. Now, dominion is not, you know what? I woke up today and I want to sell my house and I want to move out of state. You know what? Everybody's going to do what I say because I'm the man and I'm in charge. Dude, sit down. No, that's not leadership. That's a tyrant. Okay. What is leadership is, hey, sweetheart, dear wife, I had this thought. What if we moved? What if we did this? What if we did this fun thing? What if we just, instead of like spending the summer in Texas next year, we go and hang out in Colorado and just see what it's all about? Now we're having that conversation, and I'm sharing part of what I'm envisioning with my family to see if it's something they're even interested in. Maybe I just had a wild hair and I had a crazy dream and I'm just thinking weird. And I need her to say, calm down, honey. We're not moving anywhere. It's going to be okay. And sometimes we need our wives to speak into that. But what I mean by dominion is if a man wants peace and respect in his home, it must start with him. If he wants more love and intimacy in his marriage and in his relationship, it must start with him. If he wants to get his family farther ahead financially, it must start with him. If he wants to grow, if he wants to see his family grow spiritually with depth and intimacy, it must start with him. And for any man out there that's like, well, that's not fair, go back and listen to this whole episode again.
I was just thinking that it's what you were saying, to your sons about you have a choice. You can give up your power and let things happen to you and not have dominion over your household and not have the peace and love that you're desiring. Or you can choose to make the moves that are necessary from the inside out to create that, and just accept I actually can make this change if I desire to. And maybe it won't feel quote unquote fair, but if I want to live a life that feels fair to me, I'm going to end up in situations I'm not seeking. And
Right.
if I want to live the life I desire, then I get to go first.
And just to add to this topic of dominion, and what I'm really trying to convey here is that there are Granted, there may be people listening to this conversation that disagree with what I'm about to say, and that's completely fair and fine. You are entitled to believe what you want to believe. This is where I'm coming from, and to clarify what I'm trying to say. I believe that there is a specific office that a man holds and an office that a woman holds. There is no way, shape, or form that I, as a man, can ever give birth to children or give the loving nurturing that a mother can. I just can't do that. Okay? It's not my DNA. It's not who I am. That's for my wife. She's the queen, and that is what her role in her office is. My role in my office as the king is this is the direction that the kingdom is going to go. So there's a role in an office, and I believe a lot of times, a lot of marriages fall apart because they've forgotten what role they're supposed to play. And again, I want to be very clear. We've said it numerous times throughout the call. So if anybody's getting their panties in a knot or boxers in a knot for that matter, whatever the case may be, leadership is not demanding anything from anyone. Leadership is knowing who you are, where you're going, and what you want to accomplish, and inviting the people you love to come along with you. There's an office and a role that a man needs to play. And if he's filling that role, then it will give space for her to fit comfortably into her role. And now you have that polarity, that masculine and feminine polarity. And now there's attraction is coming back again because everybody's fulfilling their office. Whereas what usually happens is a man fails to lead. He vacates his role. Now she has to step in, and now she's pissed at him. Okay. And he's like, well, why is she mad at me? I'm just trying to keep the peace. It's like, dude, you're doing it wrong. Anyway, I hope that clarifies what I'm trying to convey about dominion.
Yeah, totally. I think that was a great question and a great conversation that will give the audience a lot of clarity. And I'll share one thought that I had, and then we got two more questions for you.
Cool.
A lot of men have this desire for her to surrender to me. I just want her to surrender to my leadership. But I don't frame it like that. I frame it as you do your duty, you fill your office so completely and wholly that she can surrender to her own feminine nature. So she doesn't have to have a toe in your office because you got it, because everything in there is handled, and she can rest back on her plush pillows on her throne and do her feminine thing. It's like creating that security is what allows that. So part of our mission with this podcast is to make it abundantly apparent where all the good guys are. There's a question, where are all the good guys? It's like they're all over the place. So question for you is like, what other men do you recommend that our audience Google or learn from?
We can refer a couple of books that have been really, like The Way of the Superior Man by David Data was just a tremendous transformative resource for me. That book sat on my shelf for 5 years, and then I read it. I read it on our trip to we went to Disney World, and I listened to it on the audiobook on the drive, and I was like, why didn't I listen to this sooner? So there was that one. I really appreciate Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. I think that's a really solid book. There's a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMeo. That one was really transformative for me. Oh, you ask for masculine examples, but there's a really, really awesome book written by a woman that for your female audience, I strongly encourage them to listen to this book. And for the men, listen to this book as well, because it's going to help you understand where you might be on your journey. The name of the book is The Amazing Development of Men by Allison A. Armstrong. Wow.
And the last question is, we like to give our audience homework at the end of each episode. So if you were to assign a piece of homework, what would it be?
I would invite the listener, male or female, to get a pen and a piece of paper out and answer these questions. Where are you now? Where are you? Not like location, but where are you in your marriage? Where are you in your business? Where are you in your spiritual journey? Where are you in your relationship? Is where you're at, how do you feel about where you're at? That's question number 2. How do you feel about where you're at? Question number 3, is where you're at working for you or not working for you? And if it's not working for you, okay, what do you want instead? And start asking those questions to yourself. And here's the important part. Tell the fucking truth. Tell the truth. Whether you believe in God, the universe, a higher power, whatever it is, if you want transformation, you may have listeners that are like, my life is amazing. I don't need anything else. But high likelihood, if they're listening to this podcast, there's something lacking and they're looking for answers. If you want to transform your life, it is going to require you to get in touch with God, the universe, a higher power. It's going to require you to get in touch with something above you. And the only way you can do that is through truth. See, so homework, where are you now? How do you feel about where you're at? Is where you're at working for you or not working for you? And what do you want instead? Right? Those are like 4, maybe 5 questions that somebody can ask themselves, and just write it down and tell the truth. If you're struggling right now, be honest. And if I can, just share a quick story about that. It was actually this year, the beginning of take that back. It was like November of 24 when I started to realize, you know what? I'm telling the truth. Yeah, I'm going through these prompts and I'm answering honestly. I'm telling the truth about where I'm at. And then I went into this mastermind, and ironically, they asked basically the same questions. And I was the first person. There was like a 3-day, 8 hours a day seminar, and it's day 1. And the guy comes out like the main trainer, and he's just like dropping bombs and he's spitting fire on everybody. And it's kind of like, oh, damn. Right? There's like 60 people on this call and he's on fire. And he's not saying, like, some people are checking out because they're like, this is too intense. I can't take it. I don't want any part of it. I want my money back, and they're out of here. So he's spitting bombs, and then he calls me up. I'm the first person. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm used to being on camera. I do coaching. I'm good. I'm solid. And he starts asking me these questions. What about this? How's this going? How's this in your relationship? How's this? And how's this? And how's this? And I'm like, yeah, it's here and it's there and I'm doing good and this is good and this is good. And then at one point he goes, why is this so funny to you? I was kind of like, what? And he goes, yeah, dude, you were talking about arguing with your wife and you're telling me and you're smiling about it. Is this funny? You're talking about how disconnected you feel from your kids and you're laughing. Is that nervous laughter, or are you like, how do you really feel? And he starts really pressing me. And at one point, like I couldn't say anything because I just felt this rage coming up inside of me. This rage that I hadn't felt in a long time. And he calls me out on it. He goes, it looks like you're mad right now. And I was like, yeah, I'm fucking pissed. And he goes, I don't care if you're mad at me. And I was like, look, man, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad because I finally realized how much I've been lying to myself. And so that's my invitation for you. Where are you? How do you feel about where you're at? Is where you're at working or not working? And where do you want to go? What do you want instead? And tell the truth.
Yeah. And you're right. That is the important part, to tell the truth. Because guys who do this homework, you could have one experience where you're like, I did the homework. I'm going to listen to the next episode. Or you could have an experience with the homework where it could really change things for you. And, if you're caught up in this, I can't complain. Like, I should be grateful. Like, a lot of people have it worse. Like, shut up. Like, be real with yourself. A lot of people do have it worse. That's right. That doesn't mean that you can't have it better for yourself. And I say this because I've been there and my life wasn't changing. And when I was honest with myself, that's when my life started to change. So do the homework, do it for real. All right, Ryan, any last reflections, thoughts, or maybe share with the people where they can find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Ryan J. Walla. You can also go to my website, www.thenextlevelman.com. Those are the places I hang out the most. I personally answer every DM that comes through. It might take me a day or two, but I get to them all, I promise. Final thoughts would be, let love guide you. Again, stop keeping score. If you're on this journey of healing and personal development, don't do it for anyone else. Do it for you. Do it for you because you deserve it. You're worth that much. And I get emotional thinking about that because so many people have forgotten who they are. And you have a beautiful invitation to come home and remember how powerful you really are, men and women. So lead with love. Let that be your guiding star.
Ryan Walla, thank you so much.